Hi, and welcome to another episode of You Haven't Seen What? A married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. Hi, I'm Joelle.
I'm Parry.
We're married, even though you tortured me again with another damn movie.
How was I to know that Toy Story would not pull at your heartstrings like it has for so many?
I'm a little too pragmatic for this, and I also didn't hoard my toys as a child.
Yes, that's something we're gonna get to in a minute. Was our relationship with our toys and how that made Toy Story a very different experience for us. But before we do, I have to give another correction.
You're supposed to let me know so I can do this.
Yeah, because I didn't want you doing the epic fail.
What if somebody is new? They don't know what that is.
Yes, I misquoted something last time, and I was talking a whole lot about being a pedant and wanting people to correct me if I was incorrect, and so I was correcting something I had said before, and what I realized was I misquoted Hamilton, a very important line in Hamilton. In fact, I think one of the best lines where they say, "Immigrants, we get the job done," but I said, "We get it done." And the jobs, to me, is actually a very important word in that statement, considering the discussion of jobs and who takes whose jobs and who deserves what jobs. And so I thought that was a very important piece. And considering we've listened to the Hamilton soundtrack, 300 or 400 times since we saw it, then I am pretty sure that I got that line wrong.
Yep. So this is all I have to say for you. On your part for getting that part wrong.
So, but I've been thinking a lot last week, or in the last couple of weeks since we recorded, about the Golden Child. It's been kind of playing on my mind, and I realized...
Why can we not move on?
Well, we can, but I realized something that would, to me, have made the Golden Child an even better film. A little mini rewrite. And
it wasn't supposed to be a good film.
No, but this is... Because one thing we discussed was the fact that as a black hero in the film, that's never mentioned, and it's just accepted that, hey, he's the chosen one. But what if it had turned out that she was the chosen one? That they got it wrong, and in the end, he can't kill the demon because he's not the chosen one. It's her. And because she's a badass through the whole thing.
No, he couldn't have gotten the knife. That doesn't work.
You could
that doesn't work.
That. I just think it would have been cool if she had been the hero in the end. I think that would have been awesome.
Which she? The Golden Child?
No. Shoot, I'm forgetting the character.
Or the 18-year-old.
Yes, the 18-year-old. The one who didn't seem that surprised about coming back from the dead. Like, she just kind of smiles.
Nothing about Asian culture, because truthfully... Asian culture is highly misogynistic, and the men are more important than the women, so she would never have been the chosen one.
That's why it would have been awesome had she been the chosen one.
That's just not the reality of the culture.
And
moving on, I've just disproven your new theory.
We will give the information that Joelle is Chinese Jamaican, so that's where she gets some of that information from. So
yes. I also read the news. But it is. So, like on my family tree, I don't exist on my family tree.
What do you mean you don't exist on your family tree?
Only the men exist on the family tree.
Oh, like you're not even written, no female is written into the family tree in history?
Correct.
Not even now?
Correct.
Who's writing this down?
So, no, I mean, like in my immediate family, we obviously have everything. But in the ancestral family tree, it's the men that are written down, not the females.
Where's that being written down? I'm going to sneak in and write it in.
I'm just letting you... this is just how it is. It's not... It's very challenging to go ahead.
I think Ancestry.com would have something to say about this.
Listen, there are some things that that we struggle to change with, and we're trying to change every single day and every single time. And hopefully with the next generation, this will evolve even more. I mean, the culture has evolved generally as a whole. And let's put it this way, they're not having a hashtag #MeToo issue over there necessarily.
Not yet.
Well, I guess it all remains to be seen.
It takes a while for things to spread.
They have
sometimes.
more respect and familial cultural respect than to go ahead and do that, right? Mm-hmm. They used to do really horrific things to their women, and women used to do horrific things to themselves to please their men. I mean, that's culturally everywhere. I don't want to talk about it. Either way, that would not be appropriate Eastern studies.
Well, as we made the big point, this was not a very a serious or accurate film in any way, so it really could have gone anywhere. Although, you know of my dislike for prophecies, but I will say it was still a better prophecy than in the Star Wars prequels.
Why are we still talking about this?
We are done.
Done. It's 10 minutes in. New subject. Toy Story. I mean, either way, it's okay.
So, we're moving into Toy Story.
The story of two toys headed for a showdown.
You are a child's plaything!
You are a sad, strange little man.
And playing by their own rules.
And I will give a quick synopsis of said Toy Story that if you have never seen, I don't really know where most of you have been, like my wife who had never seen Toy Story, because it's on TV all the time. Well, I don't know, Disney TV was all the time, and I don't know, I feel like it was on everywhere at all times.
Children. My goddaughter was not alive then when that was happening.
That's assuming it's only a children's film. And there are many adult aspects to it. At its heart, it is a child's film, but it also speaks to the larger love of the things of our childhood, especially for this generation that did not put away childish things and kept all our toys or rebought them on eBay if our parents threw them away, because every kid has a story about their Star Wars toys being thrown away by their parents, at least of my age group.
I didn't have Star Wars toys.
Right, and that's going to get to the heart of some of our discussions.
So maybe you should do the synopsis.
I should. So, when a favorite toy gets insecure about being replaced by a fancy new model, he resorts to fighting dirty to protect his place in his owner's heart.
Oh, that's actually pretty good.
That's about the shortest I've ever done, and it sounds like it could be like
a bite,
like a Netflix description or something, right?
That's really good.
All right, thank you. I wrote it right before this. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's better than the entire movie.
Oh, wow, we're gonna jump right into that, aren't we?
I have to really give a disclaimer. If you can't tell by my voice already, I'm dealing with a cold, and I probably am too medicined up to really have this conversation, but we're going to have it anyway.
Yeah.
So if I sound crotchety, it's because I am.
And
I've
had some beer, so, I'm just ready to go.
Crotchety and loosey-goosey over here. I love it.
These are
what a freaking dynamic duo we are.
All things that connect directly to Toy Story.
Kind of a little bit. Yeah, I definitely feel more like Woody than I do Buzz Lightyear.
So, we recently watched Toy Story, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe about the 10th time in my life I've seen it.
10 times?
Well, most of those were not like sitting and focusing. I did see it in the theater, and I was pretty enthralled with it, of course, because it was the first full-length feature computer-generated film, and so to me that technical aspect was fascinating. And I had watched a lot of Pixar's shorts prior to that, and I knew what Luxo Jr. was. Of course, it's the lamp that now bounces on the eye in the Pixar intro to every film. And I knew what those things were. And so I was fascinated by the technical. But like I said, I had seen it many times. You had not. And so we had some heavy discussion afterwards. And let's talk a little bit about that. What were your initial thoughts?
Toys have feelings, apparently.
And that's why you should never throw away your toys, but you should keep buying more so that they have friends.
Sure. I mean, I just think eventually... Listen, it's so difficult. I had maybe a couple of toys per se, but by the time I was about 10, it was really more about books, and there wasn't a favorite toy any longer. Not really. I was having books and cameras and doing other things, so I don't really understand this whole toy fetish thing.
This is why Joelle is a PhD candidate.
No, I mean, there are multiple reasons why I didn't have a lot of toys, and if we're going to psychoanalyze, my dad would make me, every time, it literally is the thing that Woody fears the most, right? So every time you get a toy has to kind of go. Right? So every time, every year we would do like spring cleaning, right? Mm-hmm. So then we would go ahead and get rid of the toys. Well, even if I didn't think that I was over said toy, we would get rid of the toy. So it didn't matter that I hadn't touched my dollhouse since I was 6. At age 7, it was, or that I got it at age 6. I think at age 7, it was pretty much gone, or at age 8. So it was pretty quickly after. So I never really got attached to too many toys. My Cabbage Patch Kids, I think by age 13 were gone. Care Bears too.
So you were practicing minimalism pretty early on.
I was not practicing minimalism. My father was practicing minimalism because he didn't want everything to be too crazy. So, all those stuffed toys, they got purged every year. I could only keep a few things. And I have bought a handful of things from my childhood. Like I think I had, no, but I think I've given them away now. Like it's much easier, I think, post going through Hurricane Andrew to give things away.
Because a lot of things were destroyed. And
you're like, oh, it can get destroyed in a second. So it doesn't really matter. Maybe I'll give it to a good home right now. Somebody who will play with it. So I don't really have a toy fetish.
And see, for me, I admit I started early and got toys often. And
of course you did. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Pete and Karen.
And I still have many of said toys, or have rebought.
Did your sister have a lot of toys? Andrew, did you have a lot of toys?
She did. Although she did cut all the hair off the My Little Ponies at the neighbor's prompting. And I think I might have assisted in that process a little bit. Of course you did. I was never a Sid. Well, okay, I did melt a few G.I. Joes, and I feel really bad about that now. But they were not my G.I. Joes. They were Matthew's. But he volunteered.
Super rude.
He volunteered them.
No.
He did. He brought them to the bonfire. I did not.
At your prompting.
No, actually. We would have a big sleep out at the end of every school year. On the last day, we'd have a camp out in the backyard. It would end up looking like a war zone out there. But one year, besides burning a couple of books from the school year, we
burned books.
Well, it was a math book. I wasn't that good at it, so it was making me upset. But we also, as I remember, I think it was Wild Bill, the helicopter pilot, that may have bought it in the crash into the
Wild Bill wasn't cool enough.
Wild Bill was awesome, actually.
So he didn't make the cut. I don't understand. Matthew.
I don't remember the rationale, but it was one of the few toys that we ever destroyed. Most of them we kept and held on to.
Okay, we're way off the subject now.
But yeah, I had a deep relationship with toys, and as you know, my father encouraged me to touch things. Jesus. And so to me, there's sort of a tactile relationship with a lot of those toys, like God. The feel of them, the weight of them, and so there's a closeness. There's a kind of an emotional attachment to a lot of them.
Can we talk about your touching issue right now? Maybe we could talk about it later when we talk about John Lasseter's touching problem.
I do not have that same type of touching issue.
No, you don't have that same type of touching issue.
Touching something in the impulse section at Target on the way out of the store is not the same.
No, it is not the same.
It is a very different touch.
It is a very different touch. Touche, salesperson. However, I will say this. So I grew up and this is culturally, I think, as well, right? So I think I had to downsize my toys and stuff because really, my dad growing up, he had to share a room with his brother. And, at some points they had to share common areas with the entire family, and there were 4 kids. So for him, it was always like, well, it's taking up too much space. Like, you need space to do your work and to move around, and it looks messy, so you need to keep it neat and orderly. My dad's a little OCD, and so am I, as a result. So there just wasn't a lot of disorder or chaos. Well, allowed, right? So I don't know. I don't look at toys. I don't know where the heck I was going. Oh, culturally. So culturally, also, I was not allowed to touch things on store shelves unless we were going to buy them. Like, I had to look with my eyes and not with my hands because that made sense. So when Parry did not grow up in the school of thought. Parry was taught to touch the world, like touch every single object. It's okay.
Yep.
So when we go to the store, I'm like, why are you touching things? Are you buying it? Why are you touching it? Stop touching people's things. Like, I don't want to get the thing that somebody has touched a bajillion times. I want to get the thing that no one has touched but the person putting it on the shelf.
Well, that's why you get the one from like in the back.
I do. That is why. But
I
still,
mean, I do too. But I want to touch and look at the packaging because I like packaging, and I want to turn it around.
No, you either know you're going to buy it or you're not going to buy it. If you're going to buy it, just get the one that you're going to buy and call it a day.
Well,
why do you have to touch everything?
If it's like 25 different Star Wars figures and I don't know which one I want to buy.
You don't have to touch it in order to look at it.
Well, they're stacked behind each other. I can't see the ones that are in the back.
No. If that was the case, maybe all the time I would go ahead and accept that, but that shit is not the case. It's the same one front to back, and you're still touching every single one. Even things you're not going to buy and not really interested in, you're still touching it. Still touching it. Shit drives me bananas. Don't go to the store with us.
This from the person who refaces all of the...
Yes, I worked retail for fucking 16 years of my life. I can't help but reface and front things.
Yep.
The hangers drive me crazy when they're all the wrong way. The sizing drives me crazy.
All those end caps that are a disaster. Yeah.
Drives me all types of nuts, which is why I need to work a seasonal job somewhere so I can just reface everything to my heart's content. My OCD land world.
So when going to a store with Joelle and I, one has to be prepared for certain things.
Yes. The only time I'm allowed you to touch stuff is when we're trying to figure out Lego minifigs, and then we have to touch up the package.
Right. You have to feel them up to feel which one's in there so you don't get the same one 5 times.
Yes. But see, notice I'm still good at feeling it up. Feeling up the Lego package. Jesus.
Once again, we'll get to feeling up later in this podcast.
Oh, God. Hashtag me too for my Lego minifigs.
Well, I guess if it's female minifigs, we might have a Toy Story issue here. But anyway.
Oh, that's so gross.
So, back to the stuff with the toys. It's true that I was a little conflicted when I really watched this and thought about my toys because it's so seamlessly blended the messages of, friendship and camaraderie with materialism, and that you can be a good person and not only buy stuff, but you can be on the side of the stuff. Like, stuff is good people in this movie. The toys are good creatures. And that you root for them, and how many kids have been traumatized by this movie in not wanting to get rid of their toys? Like, can you imagine if you had seen this movie as a kid and then your father was making you get rid of toys, how you would have felt about it?
Oh, that my toys have feelings?
Mm-hmm. And that they fear going to Goodwill and the garage sale?
Yeah, I'm way too pragmatic for that. I don't even know how to imagine that. Not really. I had no childhood. I don't know. I was not a child. I was not a normal child.
That's why we live a lot of childhood things now.
Is that really? I don't know.
Well, what my theory is that the next logical connection to this film in Pixar is WALL-E, because the world has been filled by consumer items and the film is a true indictment of consumerism. So maybe it's because of all the toys that everyone kept that the world filled up and WALL-E has to squish them all into little blocks.
Oh, so your favorite quote, because I don't have one. Oh, sorry, guys. I really wanted to like this movie. In fact, I bought the entire trilogy. Like, I actually bought the entire trilogy because everybody says how amazing it is. And I do actually like Pixar films, some of them. So I was really looking at it as, of course I'm going to like this. Everybody says that they love this. And to be quite frank, I didn't. So there's that.
Well, and, like we said, there's a very different relationship with toys that you and I have. And so, to me, the idea of my toys coming alive at night was something that I entertained as a child. I gave them
that's something I feared as a child. Fucking Gizmo, get the hell out of here with that bullshit.
Your Gizmo trauma.
Listen, I'm telling you, I didn't want my Cabbage Patches to come alive. I was doing a good job raising them all by myself. I didn't need them to critique me and how I was doing or my Care Bears. I think I had a very distinct vision of what was real and what was fake. And I knew that they weren't going to come alive. So there's that.
Well,
I never had like a Teddy Ruxpin that talked to you or some shit. Like my shit did not talk to me.
Well, aside from trauma and the other issues with the story, I thought that the screenplay was extremely well written, and I thought it had a lot of the characters did come alive in terms of their personality and their relationships with each other, and it was actually written by Joss Whedon of Firefly fame, of course, and Serenity, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and many other things. But I thought that there were a lot of great quotables in it, and I actually had trouble narrowing down things like "The Claw's our master" or "Stop it, you zealots." But "Son of a Building Block" was another favorite. I really was thinking that maybe Laser Envy or We're Next Month's Garage Sale Fodder for sure.
We're next month's garage sale fodder for sure.
Although I kind of liked What Do You Say I Get Someone Else to Watch the Sheep Tonight?
No.
Because what I realized later, especially with the new information that we have, is that there are no female characters in the first film other than Bo Peep, who actually is not one of Andy's toys. She belongs to Molly. And she's only presented in a sexualized manner as wanting to always make out with Woody. And that line she says is, of course, the line of innuendo, which when I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a movie that appeals to adults and kids in that way. But as time has gone on, and especially recently, I've come to realize that it's a very masculine universe in Andy's room. And yes, he's a boy.
Well, it's a very masculine universe in animation in general.
Very true.
I mean, it's definitely changed over the course, and you're definitely seeing more like Megs and Family Guys. Like you're seeing a little bit of a difference, but animation as a whole.
But you're seeing some tougher female characters too, like Pixar's Brave was one of those examples.
Sure,
and in The
that
Incredibles,
was directed by a man, ultimately.
Yeah, it was.
It was not originally.
Yeah, it was a woman who was hired who was pushed
then
out.
Fired.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
good old John.
But it is something shifting, but yeah, not fast enough. And again, I never really looked at Bo Peep that way until I rewatched here. Now, they do introduce some other female characters, strong female characters, in the sequels. But in this film, she's it. Now, I hear 4 is going to be about the search for Bo Peep, that Woody goes back on the hunt for her. And I don't know how that's going to play out, although Tim Allen has compared it to Avengers Infinity War, which makes me very nervous.
Well, here's the thing. I think that it probably is in Kidland the same as in, I guess, preteen, teenage land, the equivalent, right? So...
Well, I just hope a lot of characters don't die, like
they're going to die.
War, so.
No, they are going to die.
See, that's terrifying. That's going to put a lot of kids in more therapy than Sid probably needed after the toys came to life and told him to stop fucking them up.
Well, I'm just saying that's kind of part of it, no? Christopher Robin's poo.
Oh, well, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
So I was sobbing in my popcorn watching Christopher Robin because...
I was sobbing in my popcorn too, so I'm not really heartless, okay? Let's just... Pooh's a little different, I guess, maybe.
Well, you were the one who kept leaning over and saying, and you left your Winnie the Pooh in the storage shed.
You did. Evil.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have my childhood bear in a storage shed. My childhood bear is right behind me on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I was
the only stuffed toy that I have from my childhood.
I was afraid to damage it, flying it back in the suitcases.
You take it in your carry-on.
I was still afraid of it. It's so brittle at this point. I don't want to further... You saw what rough shape Pooh was in.
Yeah, Pooh was in super rough shape. You were hard on that bear.
I was hard on that bear because I loved that bear to the point of
Great.
disintegration.
Great. You wrap it up in a pillowcase and you call that a day.
Well...
It's better than being alone in the dark in a box. You heartless one. Just when you think that I'm the heartless one, this is really about you and your heartlessness.
Yeah, especially when you consider what kind of, creatures might get in there with him.
No, for real. Just even like, silverfish. Ew, gross. Invading Pooh's eyes.
That's why he's wrapped in a plastic bag.
So you're suffocating Pooh? What if your toys really are alive and you're suffocating Pooh?
Well, they don't need to breathe.
You're suffocating. You really wrapped him up in plastic?
Yeah.
No, fool. The plastic is going to break it down. It's not archival. It's going to further damage your Pooh Bear.
Now I know what to do with that spare display case we have, though.
Oh, my goodness. You can't display case that Pooh. I mean, you can. You can do whatever you want with it.
Well, if anyone just came in at that moment, it sounds like we're talking about something else entirely.
Oh, Pooh? Not Pooh.
Which is why Winnie the Pooh's name has always been somewhat problematic. But...
if you're 4. If you're 4 years old.
Yes, but aren't some of us perpetually 4?
Sure.
So let's move into... I don't know if you're up for whistling with your
I can do it.
illness.
I can do it.
Okay.
That's actually probably the best one I've ever done.
Yeah, you got to get sick more often.
It's because I haven't used my voice all day long. I literally just did data entry today.
Well, we are talking now the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
So, tell me, Joelle, what was your good?
Shit. Well, okay. So I will give it this. In the idea of computer animation and this being a full CGI movie, that's pretty freaking brilliant. I can recognize brilliance, and that in and of itself is brilliant. So I give props to them figuring it out and really making it, 90 minutes of crazy.
Well, bing, 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 we have the same one.
Oh, yay!
Yes, because that was...
wonders never cease.
Yeah, just not only the technical mastery that was required and the, creativity and artisticness, but just the push to do it. Because this was a huge task to do in the early 90s, to create a full-length feature. Now, apparently, Lasseter had been pushing Disney to do a full-length feature since Tron. He had wanted to do one. And so he believed in the viability of it much, much earlier and helped to really push that process over the years. But, of course, I don't know. I guess it was that final connection with Steve Jobs that really helped to push the next step forward in actually doing this. But, yeah, it was the ability to actually do that to me is the really impressive part, is the right people in the right place at the right time with the right level of technology.
Yeah. It's very fair.
So, you're bad.
I'm going to get so much hate mail. I mean, I'm probably already getting hate mail anyway for not loving Toy Story. My bad is that the plot line is just really simplistic, which it's supposed to be for a kid's movie. I think I just have difficulty with movies that don't believe that kids can feel or think beyond simple. So, yeah, that's my bad.
Now, do you think maybe they kept it a little bit simple because it was the first time this was ever being done, and they had a certain set of technical limitations?
Maybe, but the amount of times that they had to rework it and rewrite it and redo things to it, right? If you look at the behind-the-scenes specials and stuff, I don't know, go for the gusto. Like, if this is the movie that they really wanted to make, right? I mean, give me a couple, something else. I just need something else. It just was very basic. I don't know. I think the hype really messed me up on this one, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like oh yeah, it's amazing. And, Disney World just opened up Toy Story Land as well. And the hype around that, and it's just awesome. When you say Tinfinity and beyond, like there's this thing, and even I knew that slogan before all of this. So it's just tough. I don't know. I think I expected something a little bit more thought-provoking. Maybe I was overshooting it because it's about toys. Maybe.
Well, and yeah,
Well, Gremlins was about toys, wasn't it? Anyway, go ahead.
Was it? Gremlins were alive. They weren't toys.
But weren't they?
I mean, they were
no,
sold
they
as
were
toys.
alive.
But
They were sold as toys. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. Human trafficking. Well, pets.
Yeah, I guess it was trafficking, wasn't it?
Yeah. Trafficking exotic pets.
Yep, which is how we got pythons in the Everglades. But that's a whole nother thing.
So what's your bad?
My bad is that, I just don't think that Sid would be out on his own with no parental supervision out at Pizza Planet in the middle of the night.
You're totally fucking baiting me right now. Fuck you. You're fucking baiting me. Folks, after fucking months of fucking doing podcasts with Parry, I finally know that he's fucking baiting me, because this is exactly what I fucking said to him. I go, this is unfucking realistic. This kid is a fucking sociopath, and there's no way in hell his parents would have let him out to go by himself to fucking Pizza Planet, because that place is crazy pants. So that is improbable.
Yep.
And not realistic. Improbabilistic is my...
Improbabilistic. I like that.
That's my word for that.
Probabilistic. Yeah, see, it really said to me, I admit I had a laughing fit at that moment because...
Yeah, you did. You fucking broke down in like the giggles for like the next half an hour.
Because it says so much about who we are in terms of how we approach things that in a movie about sentient toys... You were the only person I've ever known who points out that Sid is
a sociopath.
Not that he's a sociopath, because that's obvious, but that he's out in the middle of the night with no parental supervision. He's like, Dora the Explorer out there at Pizza Planet, by himself. Realistic. Now, his parents were obviously pretty rotten, as we could see in there, that like his dad was passed out in front of the TV in the one scene.
Okay, so I also have a problem with that. So just because you came up from a messed up household does not make you a messed up child.
That may be stereotype,
okay?
yeah.
That is a gigantic stereotype. That's number one. In fact, 9 times out of 10, you're more responsible because your parents are completely messed up. So sociopaths can come from good households.
Maybe his sister was the more responsible one because she appeared like she had her shit
either
together.
way. So generally the older one is the more responsible one, and the younger one is the less responsible one, generally.
Well, speaking of sociopath, you were the one who even said he wouldn't have been afraid of living toys because he's a sociopath. That wouldn't scare him.
No, that whole Sid character was just unrealistic. It's improbabilistic, to use my new word.
And then we just went down the rabbit hole of like, where did he get the money for the rocket? And, all those locks in his room would be a fire hazard.
How would he have ordered that rocket? That's my question. Like, you needed to have parental sign off on that. I'm just saying, there's so many questions I have with Sid and his motivation.
And this was pre-internet where you could just buy anything at any age.
And then where does he keep getting all these toys? If he keeps blowing them up, I, as a parent, I'm not going to keep buying them for him because he's blowing them up, right? So I've now bought you the rockets, I've bought you the toys, you're blowing and destroying it, so I have to keep buying it for you when I'm going to buy it from you. See, this is where the cultural divide definitely like comes into play here, because my Chinese Jamaican family would not be having any of that shit, and you would not be getting any more toys. That's just how that goes. I'm just saying, from a developing nation / third world country, that shit would not be going on.
I think he was just that kid who stole everybody else's toys because, of course, he comes from a broken home, therefore he's a rotten kid.
No, I mean, he was stealing his sister's... No, but some of those toys were not just his sister's toys. Some of those toys looked like some of his own toys.
Oh, yes. I'm saying he stole them from other kids in the neighborhood. Because
we didn't see that.
Because we
didn't see that.
I'm saying that, they've stereotyped him as a bad kid from a broken home, so obviously he's a thief as well.
Oh, so you're just adding on to the stereotype?
Uh-huh.
You're adding on to
I'm making fun of the stereotype at this point.
The stereotype / trope that exists.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, back to tropes.
Yeah, there actually is a big TV tropes on this too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, yes, there are quite a few in here because it's a buddy picture, and so there's a whole bunch of that type of buddy picture trope.
All right, we're not even through page 1. So what's your ugly? Did you tell me you're bad?
Yeah, well, my bad. I actually am using that as my bad. So
You're an asshole.
I stole your bad. So
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
And my ugly, actually, I already did. It was the Bo Peep. I realized how ugly the fact that there are no good female characters in it is. And just watching the interviews with like all of the male Pixar employees and all it just started compounding for me all of a sudden. And it's like, okay, now I see where this all sort of began. It's from the very beginning.
The culture.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I have to say that it starts with Bo Peep.
So mine is that, I mean, ultimately this kid becomes a hoarder. Like Andy has to be a hoarder in his life.
Well, you haven't seen 3.
Okay.
In Toy Story 3, that is disproven.
I don't really think that that's true. I think that if you had all your toys and you were never told to put them away or get rid of them, and you just were allowed to keep them, I'm looking at you, Mr. Collectorson, that you would just continue collecting and never wanting to give them away.
And he does.
And then
in the 3rd movie, he gives them to a little girl.
Oh, please.
I have wondered, though, if my pops ever came to life, what that would be like. But that would be horrifying, especially the signed ones.
I mean, the Game of Thrones would be hysterical.
The signed Rex would be awesome. But so
it's all right. I can still hear Wallace Shawn in my head.
So that was what is your ugly?
That the kid becomes a hoarder.
That is your ugly? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way. Obviously, I have not seen 3, but there's no way that really truly happens. The kid ultimately will become a hoarder.
In the real life version.
In real life version, not fairy tale made up land. Like, oh yes, look kids, you have to give your stuff away. No, that's such a lie.
It's kind of what 2 is about. Toy Story 2, there's about collecting and about whether you play with your toys or you keep them in a display case untouched. And there's a whole discussion of that in Toy Story 2.
Yep. I don't know that I'm watching it.
You'll never see it. You'll never know.
I mean, never say never. We could be stuck on some crazy tarmac and that's all that they have playing that I haven't seen, and then we'll see it. Or it could be playing one day and I could be like comatose in a hospital bed and I'll see it sort of that way.
Will you remember it if you're comatose?
Well, whatever. In and out of sleep, whatever. So you never know what could actually happen. I'll never say never, but I'm not rushing in it. And I should really preface this by saying there's a survey that one that was roaming around the internet, and I took it like of Disney/Pixar movies that you've seen, and I think it had like 70 on the list, and out of the 70 I'd only seen 12, now 13.
Of what? Pixar?
Disney
Disney/Pixar.
Pixar
Pixar doesn't have 70 films.
No,
but
yeah, Disney/Pixar.
So you'd only seen 12?
Yeah. Oh, well, now 13. Because I saw Toy Story.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just am not a cartoon person.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
that's not true. I watched a ton of cartoons growing up.
Well, we've had this discussion before about the length of a TV show versus a film for you, and it's an investment in time, and so.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, I did watch some until I can't. I just think a lot of people hold our media hostage, and I don't want to subscribe to them.
Yeah, there is truth to that.
All right.
Well, I will say that the Pixar films, many of them, not all, but many do get more complex in their plots after the original Toy Story.
I know. I've seen Cars. I've seen WALL-E.
Yeah, and WALL-E in particular.
I've seen Coco. Coco is Pixar,
yes, yeah.
right? So, yeah, and I bawled at Coco. So I'm not dissing a studio by chance.
Coco was the first where they actually sing. If you notice, they're not music. Pixar doesn't make musicals.
I will say that, yes. And it's a problem, all right? Because at least the Disney movies that I liked, it's because I've liked the songs in the movies, and the songs have helped transcend other things. And I know that's part
you know
of the
about
shit
my issue with musicals
that you hate, right? So, but like The Little Mermaid, I really like. I like Aladdin.
Even with all of its racial stereotypes.
Yes. Yeah. So, but those I feel like I probably had the best soundtracks.
And
Mary Poppins. I mean,
well,
Mary fucking
that's not
Poppins.
a cartoon.
It's not a cartoon. It's probably why I like it more, kind of honestly. Yeah, it's true. I like the ones that aren't cartoons more. Anyway, production notes with Parry. Hey, I didn't pull my numbers. So you talk about production notes. I'll pull numbers.
All right. So there are a lot of production notes, and of course, there's no way I would go through them all, but there's a lot of really...
But he's going to try, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to try.
Well, there's a lot of really interesting stuff about it, such as, like, I did not know that Billy Crystal and Chevy Chase were originally offered the role of Buzz Lightyear, and neither of them took it, but the reason that Tim Allen wanted to do it was because he liked Chevy Chase and wanted to take it, because if they'd offered it to Chevy Chase, then it's a role he thought he would be right for because he idolized him so much. And they're both kind of jerks.
That explains so much.
Yeah, in real life, they're both kind of jerks.
Okay.
So it was the first animated film in Oscar history to be nominated for a Best Screenplay. And there was a special technical award given to Lasseter for advances in film technology, which was needed to make this film. Tom Hanks recorded the dialogue between breaks on Sleepless in Seattle, League of Their Own, Forrest Gump, and Philadelphia. But he would only record between Sleepless in Seattle and League of Their Own because he didn't want to break the dramatic roles of Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, so he wouldn't do any dialogue when he was doing those films. But he did record dialogue during League of Their Own and Sleepless in Seattle because he thought that those were light enough to do the comic roles. Some of my favorite characters in the films were the toy soldiers. I thought they were great. I thought it was great that they got R. Lee Ermey to do the voice because he's the one who plays the Marine drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket. And the fact that every boy anyway, had that bucket of army men, or you'd get them in that clear plastic bag at the store, and your parents would just get them like, hey, it's $2, we'll get these and you'll shut up. But I had millions of those little soldiers, and the way that they got them to move in the film was by nailing a pair of sneakers to a sheet of wood and then have people walk around on them. That's how they modeled the movement for the soldiers, because of course they have a stand on the bottom that they cannot detach from. Original versions of the film were very, very different. The tin toy from one of their early shorts was going to be the main character, and it was going to meet up with a ventriloquist dummy. The dummy, of course, eventually became Woody. There was going to be a toy called, I think it was Lunar Larry, which eventually became Buzz Lightyear, who was named for Buzz Aldrin, one of the original astronauts. And
you don't say.
Fun little detail, because Sid is such a maniac. The carpet in his house with the hexagonal pattern is actually modeled after the carpet in The Shining that's in the hotel.
Sociopath.
Yes, exactly. Let's see. Apparently, Tom Hanks was attracted to the role because he used to envision his toys coming to life when he was a kid.
Hence Big. Okay.
Yes. In fact, it bears a lot of similarity to Big in that way.
But I love Big.
Well, it's very different in a lot of ways, too. In fact, that we actually see Tom Hanks.
Sure.
Now, in speaking of that, I have to wonder how Tom Hanks felt about the role when they went the Black Friday route, as it's been called. There's a lot of talk, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this already, but as they were making Toy Story, of course, it was connected to Disney, and they were getting a lot of notes from the studio, particularly Jeffrey Katzenberg. And so when they presented their version of the film, now Katzenberg's notes were that it needed to be edgier and darker, and that Woody needed to have an attitude and edge. And so when they finally showed a version of the first part of the film, Woody was a dick. He's just a complete asshole. And nobody liked that version of it. Nobody liked Woody. It's not funny when you see the scenes of it. It's not fun. It's not interesting.
So now that you say that, interestingly enough, so Disney villains or villains are generally like the way that it really works is like good versus evil, but you don't really have that unless you have Sid. So I wonder if they put Sid in as the evil.
So
it's not just enough that you're like going on this journey, right?
Right.
You have to have like this evil.
You have to
face evil.
And it also brings people closer together.
Jaws of death.
And it's
so so tropey. It's so tropey.
So, yes. And it is very typical in that respect.
But I understand that note more now. Mm-hmm. I get it.
And so it just made a horrifically bad product and not a fun movie. And apparently the solution was let them make the movie they set out to make. And they ended up doing that, and it turned out to be a much better film than the Black Friday version that was in process before they had to put a halt to everything for a little while, for I think 2 weeks, to retool it completely. Which also may be why some of the plot is so simple, because they just didn't have time to make it any more complex. They had to fix what had already gone horrifically wrong.
I'm sure.
Now, a little side story on that. When I worked at Apple, in one of the first store in Glendale, they were, at the time, it was before Disney had fully bought Pixar. I think that was 2006, and brought them fully in. But a few years before that, I think around 2002 or 3, I had Pixar employees coming into the store and starting to tell me stories about how in the office at Disney there in Los Angeles, where they had been merged in, they were making them get rid of their Macs, and they were like hiding them in closets and squirreling them away places so that they wouldn't take away their Mac computers, because they wanted to replace them with PCs, and so they were just putting them wherever they could. And I remember the employees who would come into the store were just horrified that they were trying to make them get rid of the Macs, especially given the early connection to Steve Jobs. But I don't know if they got away with their plan, but I do remember that well, but many of them were coming in around then. So let's see. Give me just a second here.
Okay. Well, I can give you some like data if you want. So the release date for the United States as a whole was November 22nd, 1995. Running time is 81 minutes. There's a budget of $30 million, and they ended up making $374 million. So pretty good. I, of course, am like the only person on this planet who doesn't love this movie. Because it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, like 8.3 on IMDb. 92% of Google users love this movie.
So is that saying
Metacritic
that there are
is
two
95%.
kinds of people, those who like Toy Story and those who are wrong?
No, I think there are two types of people. I mean, I think that if you're a movie lover, you're probably going to love this movie. I think that it does a lot for your imagination in terms of, toys come to life. And if you're a parent watching their child with their toys, or a kid, you're probably going to love this movie. I just didn't have that same relationship with my toys.
So you don't also relate to the theme of that feeling of obsolescence that happens as we age, where that newer, younger, flashier model comes in, and sometimes you're not looked at the same way because they're younger and flashier.
No,
you don't. It's not like I feel like this is first toys club. It's like first wives club for toys.
No, it's not. Here's the thing. I believe in the idea of always evolving. So to me, I'm always a new, shinier version of myself.
Ooh,
like the phoenix, I burn down and then I re-rise from the ashes and shit. Yeah, that's me. That's how I've lived my life, right? Is to figure out how not to become obsolete. Mm-hmm. So that's always what was instilled in me, is you have to figure out how you become invaluable and what you bring to the table. And if it is changed or the needs have changed, then you need to figure out how to revamp yourself in order not to become obsolete. So that whole idea of obsolescence or not being the shiny new toy, I don't have to be the shiny new toy. I just have to be the toy that's dependable, reliable, and the one that you can't do without. So I'm your whoopee.
So what do you do then when that the new person, when someone feels threatened by that and they try to big toy you, like
Doesn't
Woody
matter.
does to
I
Buzz.
am the Whoopi. I already know in my heart that I will not be thrown away. I am the Whoopi.
Mm-hmm. So
That's just it.
You always have the spot of honor on the bed like Woody?
The spot.
Ain't no one gonna big toy you?
No. I don't even need to have the spot of honor. I just need to be on the bed still. And I will always be on the bed still.
Because it's a toy world.
I'm just saying. I might not be the one that you want on your kickball team, but I will be the one that I will be your Whoopi. You'll want me on your sideline. You won't want me not on your sideline.
Everyone wants you on their side.
You don't want me against you.
Well, yeah.
Either.
Don't I know it?
Yeah. Hush. You're ridiculous. I'm not that threatening. I'm a Whoopi.
So, throughout the film, there were a lot of references to Star Wars. If you notice that Buzz Lightyear's mission is basically the same as R2-D2, that he has the plans to the weapon that Zurg has, and Zurg is sort of a Darth Vader figure, which is in Toy Story 2. But if you notice, Sid sort of plays Darth Vader when he says, a rebel. We have ways of making you talk, since you won't disclose the location of your rebel base. And there's even a TIE fighter sound effect in there somewhere. So, but what I thought of in thinking of Star Wars, jumping back to our discussion last week of Hamilton, where we were talking about all the, the wealthy white people who thought that they were on the side of people like Jefferson and Hamilton, when really they're more like George III. It does seem that America has kind of gone the route a bit of the big empire, and we're not the scrappy little rebel. We like to think of ourselves as the rebel that's fighting the power, but we've kind of become the empire in many ways, and much like Disney has become the empire. But it isn't the little rebel fighting it's not the underdog fighting the big evil anymore. It's kind of turned around the other way.
Well, and a lot of countries go through this. I mean, it's not just... I think a lot of westernized countries go through this where they feel the need to... They're feeling their oats, they're feeling themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden we are the one wielding this power, and how are we going to wield it? Are we going to do so graciously? Are we going to mind our own business? Are we going to... be a part of it?
Yeah,
and
England's been through it, Spain's been through it, France.
Yes, exactly. So they've all been a part of this empire building, or this idea of how do we spread our oats. I just think it's important, and like all the other countries have, is to really look internally and recognize how we've delivered justice and fairness in our own shores and our own territories, and providing aid to places like Puerto Rico. Anyway. So yeah.
Speaking of toys.
So yeah, toys.
Well, actually, in talking about an era in American history when we were sort of at a height of power during the Cold War in the 1950s, a lot of the relationship between Woody and Buzz is based on what was going on in popular culture in that era, where cowboys were really the big thing in the early 50s and into the mid 50s, but then outer space became the thing. And especially with the space race and space program and post-Sputnik.
I'll take a cowboy any day.
Well, yes. And that...
See how that works?
And in the end, Woody, I think, is still most people's favorite. But he's still the Whoopi. But yeah, it was the cowboy to the spaceman, and that was actually based on some of the animators and storytellers' own experience from that era.
Yeah, but isn't that also partly the way? It's like we always want to talk about the new shiny.
Yes.
But the reality is that old dependable is going to... That's why Volvo was never going to go out of fucking business. Let's just be fucking real right now. Nor will Toyota, honestly.
Aren't they Swedish again? They were Ford for a while, then they were Chinese for a while. Now they're...
I mean, maybe I might be jinxing them, with their boxiness. But it's like, it's the old reliable. It's like, how many safety awards can you ever possibly win? It's just no one's going to throw that away ever. Not really. So if you're reliable and dependable and you give it your all, you'll still be there. That's what Woody has learned.
Well, speaking of getting thrown away, some of Buzz's features were based on John Lasseter's face, and so that has will forever cause issues in my mind now. But yeah,
maybe do we want to talk about that now? I think this is a good time.
Oh,
or do we want to talk about like impact? I mean, there's a soundtrack. Thanks, Randy Newman, for doing the soundtrack and the score.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite soundtrack smash? Was there a favorite on there for you?
Really? You're gonna...
I thought Strange Things, the one where it's the montage where it's shifting from Woody-centric Andy's bedroom to Buzz-centric. And yeah, I thought that song summed up. I know that You've Got a Friend or whatever the name of it is sums up the whole feeling of your toys are your friends. But I thought the other one was a better song overall to me.
Dude, books were my friends.
Yes.
Maybe that's the difference, toys versus books.
You know, the books in the background when Woody's giving his meeting are all the names of Pixar short films, and they're written by Pixar people. There's a big Lasseter one back there. So
interesting.
So, yeah, I may come back to a couple of these because there's a couple of important things, but I think, yeah, we should move into what has deeply colored Toy Story for me. And unfortunately, Pixar in general. And I always try to separate an artistic work from the people who have created it and who are in it.
I think you saw a difficulty in that.
But it is very difficult. Now, luckily, not luckily, but I was going to say, it's not the same as when you see an actor that has done something terrible because you're seeing them, and you're seeing something that they created. It's like a song or something, and that you still listen to, even though you know that the writer and singer was a dick. But in this case...
no, so you just don't think about all the people who worked on this film that he probably groped?
And now I was going to say, yeah.
It's like on a daily basis and creating the culture of misogyny, so much so that they are everyone. There was so many people, like executives, basically calling things out in meetings that were inappropriate and groping female co-workers.
So to take that back for just a minute,
okay.
It was... Yeah, it started as... It was all on Lasseter at first. The first reports were that...
he had a few missteps.
Yeah. Long hugs that were uncomfortably long, and like a hand on a leg under a table at a meeting, but it was made out to be more like just overly friendly. And at first it sounded like, okay, maybe... He's just really like he's a geek who suddenly has a lot of power, and so he's just a super friendly, happy guy. And then you hear things like women had invented a move they called the Lasseter, which was a way that they would position themselves so that he wouldn't touch their leg or hug them, and they wouldn't want to sit next to him in meetings. And then it started to come out that he liked there was a Tinkerbell TV show, and the Tinkerbells, he wanted to come to some event, but they had to have like a chaperone that would be with the group. He was not left alone with the Tinkerbells, and it just kept getting worse and worse.
Listen, here's the reality of it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When the story first came out, and he was stepping down, you knew that it could not be just, I gave you an extra long hug and shit.
It was 6 months at first, and I think it's now a permanent departure.
No, yeah. Well, it was like, he's going to be a consultant. We're not sure.
Yeah.
I think they're trying not to make waves before Toy Story 4 comes out, quite honestly. I think that's what they're all waiting for.
And he stepped away from directing that, but of course he had a lot of input into the pre-production.
So that's a lot of it, is that literally this guy built Pixar, then built... Walt Disney Animation, right? In general, he stepped in and did like Frozen and Brave. He did like a ton of those movies. Mm-hmm. So
well, Brave is Pixar,
but Frozen, I think he had a hand in. And yeah, the guy was groping McGroperson. #MeToo all over the place.
Yes,
it's bad. It's very bad.
And unfortunately, some people have even commented like, when I see interviews, I always kind of thought maybe he was on the spectrum. And that is a terrible way to categorize it, because every time there's some kind of incident, whether it's a shooting or something like this, people will be like, maybe it's because they're on the spectrum. And you know what? People who are on the spectrum are often hyper aware of societal settings, and would be exceptionally atypical for that. So I think
he just started getting away with things.
And for a long time.
Yeah, feeling his power, and he was just getting away with things.
And then we found out that it was a culture at Pixar, not just of Lasseter, but that of
he created this culture that because he kept doing it, because it was such the norm, that it literally became the norm at Pixar.
And that a lot of women have come out saying things.
Pixar / Walt Disney. Yeah. Let's not forget that parent company has stepped in quite a long time ago. So it's really Pixar / Walt Disney.
Yeah, they've been merged for more than 10 years at this point. So, and
female executives couldn't get promotions, or they kept getting fired or demoted,
or not getting support on projects where once they would go on like psychiatric leave because they just broke down, the male that would step in would get a dozen assistants to help out. And they were just told they were overreacting or just being overly emotional, which is such a typical accusation against women, is that you're just being too emotional. And that women were just always treated in a
so remind me again why I want to go ahead and support this.
Because
had I known then what I know now.
Yeah. And I feel like
it's like wearing the blood diamonds. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. And I don't know what other films, like I still think like WALL-E makes an amazing statement about our culture and about consumerism, even though I own WALL-E toys. And I want to try to separate the two, at least enough to say that this is still an artistic achievement that stands on its own, even if the people who created it are terrible people. And that is a really hard place to separate in my head.
It's not really. So, hello, we just saw fucking Hamilton. Let's just be real right now, all right? Most of the men who founded this country and some of, in the whole wake of political craziness that's going on right now, I can't even talk about it. But
we are recording this while the Kavanaugh investigation, quote unquote, is going on. So.
Yeah. If you don't like politics with your podcast, then don't follow us. That's the end of that, really. Be on your merry way. We wish you good luck. Now was the time. Actually, probably about 10 podcast episodes ago was the time.
If you're just stepping in here,
if you're just stepping in now,
was a good place to start.
You thought wrong. We're very political. Sorry, we lean left. And the reality is that our country was founded with a lot of shit and just awful, disgraceful behavior, right? So just prejudices, stereotypes. I mean, women weren't allowed to vote. Just so much stuff, right? So you can't always say that there isn't some good that comes out of the bad and that you don't have to experience the bad in order to get to the good, because how would you know what really good is? It's just unfortunate. It's an unfortunate circumstance. It's an unfortunate series of events. And truthfully, at this point, don't we know better? I think that's the tougher part, right? We know better. Like, it's not a secret anymore. We're not living in this bubble where it's okay to grope women or to even touch them or even hug them as their superior, as their boss, or hug anyone if you're their boss. It's just not okay. It's not an okay behavior. And it's not about being PC. It's about inappropriately touching people in a way which they don't want to be touched. That's all there is to it. And you do those borders not because you're insensitive, or you're oversensitive. It's because you need to make a boundary between worker, coworker, boss. Like, there has to be a boundary. And part of the boundary is not touching. I don't know. That seems very distinct to me. That's very black and white. There's not a whole lot of it.
And what's worse is when eyes are turned because someone is a success or because they are making a lot of money for a company. And I would hate to say that some of those Pixar films that have come out while this was well known in that community, it's sad to think they might not have existed had this come out sooner, because I think a lot of them are great films. but it's not okay that women had to be treated that way so that these films could be made. So it has, busted wide open in the last, has it only been a year and a half now? That not that these things weren't called out on occasion, but now it has just blown wide open. And I can only hope that it will create a cultural shift and that these things will not happen in the same way.
Well, it's also everybody calling it out, right? Once it starts happening, is that everybody is calling it out, and consumers of those products are calling it out and taking those businesses to task. That's the only way that really happens, and that's the only way to really impact change. Everyone's like, well, it doesn't matter if I stop watching, it doesn't matter if I stop buying, but it does matter. You should support the businesses and the people that have, the values that you believe in, and if that's really what that's about. So, and if they aren't projecting those values, you can still try to enjoy their product, but I would say that at that point, you, as a consumer of their product, hopefully they would listen to you, that they're not representing you in the best possible way. So however you want to protest that, I would say that would be a good way of showing it, is by not supporting it. I don't know, that's very heavy for Toy Story, this wonderfully animated picture.
Yeah, I would love to go back to some of the production notes, but I just don't know if I can at this point.
I don't know that you can either.
I'm not sure if we can walk backwards that way.
Can we walk backwards that way? I mean, listen, I think that it's probably, it is actually, I don't even know if I can call it a good movie now that we just discussed all that craziness. Well, it is a feat in its times. Definitely had a lot of cultural impact. Animation was never really the same after that, whether it was video games, whether it was movies, whether it was clips, whether it was commercials. Animation truly was never the same after this groundbreaking technology. It's just sad that it came with some of this baggage, right? That really shaded how we might view this later on. But I don't want to take away from the fact that it was a great feat. I don't want to take away from the fact that, it did bring a different light into, bridging this adult kid movie type thing happening, right? So that's sort of part of it, is parents being able to enjoy their kids' movies and not feel like they're getting dragged to a kid movie. So that's part of it, and it did its job that way. So I don't begrudge any of it. See, look at how I'm a champion right now. I don't begrudge any of that piece of it. I just think that I'm a little too pragmatic. Maybe I'm a little too jaded. I didn't play with toys enough.
Well, I think culturally, what it opened up was the door of this being a viable way to make a film. Because so many computer-generated films have come out since then, and their level of complexity and artistry has grown and grown and grown. And it being the first really is the groundbreaker, and that will never change, right, despite what we now know, unfortunately, about those who made it. It will never take that away, that it did shift our culture. And what's interesting is it happened at a time...
And it wasn't necessarily everybody who was working on this film, so I don't want to, be Debbie Downer on everybody who's there, and that's a very challenging place to be, and if you need a job, and what's happening in your workplace, and if and all of those pieces. So I don't want to be Debbie Downer that way.
Much like, Woody had... established a culture of suspicion that eventually goes Lord of the Flies on him when all the toys, throw him out the window. It was a culture that was established, and by many, unfortunately. And but
I love how you keep coming back to that.
Yeah,
I was leaving on a high, and then you came back to it, and then here we are, and I think we should probably wrap up soon.
Well, I will say, in moving on a little bit, that the time that was happening, where these computer-generated films really started getting moving, was an interesting shift where we were starting to see animated films trying to look more real and realistic, where films with real life actors were starting to look more cartoonish, like The Matrix, and they were able to do things that had not been possible before. And so there was this weird crossover happening in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it continues at this point. Computer-generated films look more and more realistic as the time goes on, and we're able to do more wild and inhuman type movements in cinema. And so it's interesting how those two things have crossed past each other. Well, I think that the turn we took may have been dark, but I think it was also very necessary to have this discussion, again, considering what we just witnessed on our television and computer screens at the national level the other day, and the headspace it has put many of us in. I think it was absolutely necessary to talk about how someone like John Lasseter, who, quite honestly, many of us really idolized for many years in terms of his accomplishments, and maybe this is why we shouldn't have idols, because they will often let us down and disappoint us and turn out to be horrible people. Why we shouldn't let our idols get away with thinking they're above everything else. And I think that was the big lesson here, is that no one is above treating people the right way. And you stated that already. And I think that was the only place this could have gone. And so, Joelle, will you take us to our conclusion, please?
You're hysterical. Yeah. So if you like your politics with your movies, or if you fucking don't, we'll ruin it for you. Whatever works. Hey.
Even though our whole point is to come from a positive view of even films we didn't like that much, this time we had to really go there.
No, I mean, I think it was a positive view. We said that it's the first, CGI, like we gave it props in its history. And then we just happened to mention that, the guy's a dirtbag a little bit.
But it's a positive thing that this has come out instead of going on for another, 20 years.
Which it already did. All right. So, yeah, maybe I shouldn't ask you to please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. However, if you do actually want to take a look at your movies in a very different way, which is what we sort of strive to achieve, and sometimes showing your spouse your childhood favorites makes you feel all wah inside, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Check out our website at youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. And our social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, at You Haven't Seen What Movie. And thanks for listening to us drone on about crazy politicalness. I'm sure we've lost all our subscribers now that we've just killed half of their childhood movies.
No, we lost them episodes ago.
Which one? Oh, when you called Overload your favorite Dirty Dancing song?
When I
one?
had my back alley abortion discussion in
connection
Dirty
with
Dancing. Dirty Dancing.
That's exactly one. That's exactly
the fact that I just didn't like a Golden Child that much.
I don't know. You didn't add a new segment this week, so that was a good one.
I had one, but we kind of killed the room for that.
Yes, my work here is done, folks. And on that note, thank you for listening to You Haven't Seen What. Remember,
be kind.
Rewind.
Is it too late to mention that I think that Sid was based on Scut Farkus from Christmas Story?
No, I don't think it's too late. I think you're probably right.
Cool.
Awesome. A Christmas Story. Let's find nothing wrong with that one, please.
Oh, God. I don't.
No, don't look.
I'm not looking.
Don't look. And you should never overanalyze movies that you love, by the way.
Yes, you should.
I'll let you get the last word.